because I came from a broken family. I didn't have a mother and a father in the household together, working through problems, seeing how that worked. And that, I know how that affected me. I want them to see that, and I want them to see it the right way. Yeah. So more so for me than the work aspect is just like, what am I doing at home? I work from home. I'm home now. Like, that's the main thing. Your job, you can be replaced in anything that you do, but the only area you can't be replaced is as a parent. Yeah. And that's where I have to put most of my responsibility and priority.
Welcome to the Darren Earlywine Podcast, where we awaken you to become who you were born to be. Here's your host, Darren Earlywine.
Welcome back to the Darren Earlywine Podcast. I'm Darren Earlywine, your host. So glad you guys are joining us for episode, get ready, episode 50. 50. We have done 50 episodes. Actually, we've done way more than 50, but we released these 50, and we're so excited about our 50th episode guest, Dimitri Morrison. Dimitri, you're going to love this episode. Okay, I'm going to tell you that right now, because it is a practical step-by-step way to step into becoming who you were born to be, which is what we're about right here on the podcast each and every week. We remind you of three things: that God's for you, not against you. God is near you. He's not far away. And he has created you on purpose and for a purpose. And you're going to hear a story of Dimitri walking into that purpose over the past, 4 or 5 years, really, of making some pretty major life changes to step into who he believes that God has called him to be. And I'm excited to jump into it. And so humbled and honored that you've downloaded this episode and hanging out with us once again here on the Darren Earlywine Podcast. Thank you for those that keep reviewing the podcast, keep sharing it with friends and family. And it's so great for those of you that are reaching out each and every week. I keep asking you, reach out. I love it. I love to hear what God's teaching you, where you're growing, questions that you have. You can do that. You can email me directly, darren@blackbirdmission.com, or you can reach out through any social media. Would love to stay connected with you. And here's the three things that I know about you, and I want this to just set you up for the journey that Dimitri is going to take us on, okay? Three things, say these often as well, but I know that you want your life to matter. You do. All of us do, and we want our life to matter because we are actually created in the image of God, right? To join him in what he's doing to create the future. And deep down and further than your bones, further than your emotions, down into the depths of your soul, you feel that your life should matter. And when you feel like it's not, or when you can't connect to some significant difference you're making in the lives of the people around you, those are when things begin to feel really unsettled and bad in your life. Because you know that you were created for your life to matter. Here's the problem. Here's the struggle. Fear is your enemy. Fear is present in every decision you wish you wouldn't have made and every decision you wish you would have made. Fear is your enemy, and Dimitri is going to walk us through that, about how pride was kind of the thing that fear hid behind, and how that almost kept him from being able to step into the role and the opportunities that God was placing before him, kept him from stepping out in courage, stopped him from taking the risk that he needed to take. And fear is your enemy. And what I hope you learn today as you listen to Dimitri's journey is the way that he brought together 4 elements to actually help him step over that fear and to choose courage. And that's this. It's gratitude, humility, courage, and gratitude. Okay? I just said that twice. It's gratitude, humility, courage, and faithfulness. That's what it is. Had to say it twice to get it right. Gratitude, courage, humility, and faithfulness are the 4 character traits. I'm going to call them the building blocks of becoming who you are born to be. I learned these building blocks many years ago from Erwin McManus in his book, Uprising. So influential and transformational in my life. And I saw them and I heard them and I felt them as Dimitri was talking. And so what I'm going to do at the end of this podcast, I'm going to give you an email address or a web address that you can go to, and I'm going to send you a PDF for you to be able to kind of gauge where you are at in those 4 building blocks of becoming who you were born to be. And Dimitri's going to take us through it. Because when you step into those 4 building blocks, as you begin to build upon them, what happens is fear is your enemy, but you begin to choose courage. You become courageous, you become heroic, and you step into this quest to become who you were born to be. And when that happens, you begin to understand your worth. And when you know your worth, you will change your world. You might not change the entire world, but you will begin to change your world, and your world is relationships, and everything else is just the details. Thank you, Gary Smalley. And that's the journey that you're about to listen to. with Demetri Morrison. Let's jump in, okay? It's enough of an intro. I love this interview. I love this guy. Unbelievably creative, humble, and courageous. Great guy, great story. Enjoy this conversation with Demetri Morrison right here on the Darren Early Wine Podcast. Hey, welcome back to the Darren Early Wine Podcast. Excited to sit down with my friend Demetri Morrison. And Demetri, we've walked together for quite a few years now through some pretty cool adventures. You are an amazing graphic designer. And you have not only have you made the Darren Early Wine logo, which was a super fun project to go through, but you've outlined and designed our Spiritual DNA workbooks, the old one, the brand new one that's getting ready to come out. You help with websites, just everything, business cards. If there's really graphic design for our ministry, you've done it for the past like 5-6 years.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
It has been a lot of fun, but you're so much more than that. We're going to sit down today and talk a little bit about your journey, right in line with the podcast, helping people become what they were born to be. And in the past, 4 or 5 years, you've made some pretty big decisions to really bet on yourself and move in that direction. And so I wanted to have you on the podcast because I know there are so many people that are at a place and space in life like you were about 5 years ago. They feel kind of stuck. They're not exactly sure what that next step is. And right now there's a big barrier of fear, really, that's keeping them from making that next step. And so I want to walk through today kind of the journey that led you to make those decisions, a little backdrop of your life prior to that. And I think it's going to be a really inspirational and really instructive episode for a lot of people. So welcome to the podcast.
Yeah,
dude.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, fill in the blank a little bit, Demetri, about, I gave that overview, but give us a little more about who you are, family, all that stuff.
Yeah, so I am a father. I'm a husband. I'm an introvert. But yeah, I've been doing my own design work, running my own business for the past 3.5 years. Right out of Huddle, quit my job and started that. So,
yeah. So Huddle, we'll talk about that in this episode. People might be like, "What's a Huddle?" It's like, "Are you guys playing football together?" No, but Huddle is a year-long discipleship group that I put together every year. Invite 8 people into the discipleship Huddle, and I teach some basic. It's basic stuff, just some shapes, basically help you filter through really what is God saying to you and what are you going to do about it in life. And so, Demetri, it was probably about 4 years ago that we went through Huddle and spent that year together. And that's when I really first got to know you well. And so that's when we reference Huddle, that's what a Huddle is all about. And if you want to do some study on your own about discipleship huddles, really the concept comes from Mike Breen and 3DM Ministries was where I was introduced to it and where I brought it into my life. But yeah, we spent a year together in Huddle.
Yeah, that was great. I remember back when Huddle was getting ready to start, you had a call out to, hey, if you want to join a Huddle, sign this form or raise your hand or talk to me after a service. And I told my wife, I was like, yeah, I would love to do that, but I'm not going to raise my hand. I'm not going to fill out a form. Like, that's just me being the type of person I am, the introvert or whatever. Like, I'm not good at putting myself out there, but also like wanted to be intentional. So I remember her saying, well, let's just pray about it. Maybe you should pray about like asking to do it or something. Right. Overcome that. And it was a Sunday morning. You were preaching. I was getting coffee, and you came up to get coffee. And you're like, "Oh, hey, man. Hey, have you been in a Huddle?" No. Do you want to be in a Huddle? Sure. And afterwards, me and my wife got in the car after service, and she was like, "Well, that was weird." And I was like, "Yeah, like I would never have expected just out of the blue to be invited, but it was. I feel like it was the start of what God had planned for me. Hey, you didn't think this was possible. Well, I'm going to make it happen." Now just keep following me.
What I think is so cool about that, Demetri, is that one of the ways and one of the things that we teach in Huddle is the idea of finding people of peace. And one of the things I pray every day is that God would send people of peace to my life, people of peace to our ministry, and it's a concept that comes out of the book of Luke, and there's other places where Jesus tells the disciples to go. Actually, when he sends out the 12 and the 72, he tells them to go find people of peace. And people of peace are people that are defined as people that are open to you, open to what you have to say, and they serve you in some type of way. And I pray for that, and that's why I just kind of pay attention to every year of who could be people of peace for that next year's Huddle. And my memory is horrible, so I can't go back and give you the exact process of that year. But there were some months leading up to that where I was just praying, and I always write down and keep people's names. And and you had come on my radar, you know what I mean? It was definitely from the Holy Spirit to, you know, to get connected and invite you in. But what's so cool to think about is the same time I'm just praying and saying, okay, Spirit, like, you know, who's on the list for this year? You know, you're at the same time praying like, man, I'd like to be in a connected, you know, in a huddle relationship like that. But I'd like to be invited, you know what I mean? And just see what's going on behind the scenes there is really cool.
Yeah, it was looking back, like I probably should have just raised my hand, fill out the form, done it, knowing how much it changed my life now. But I feel like the way that it happened was the way it was supposed to happen, and it had the most impact on where I am today. Yeah. Talking with, you know, friends and people I know who had been through other huddles, like, oh, yeah, I got invited in Darren's huddle. Oh, you did? And that's awesome. You ready to quit your job? And I was like, what? Oh, yeah, you're going to quit your job after you get out of this huddle. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's not a guarantee. If you get invited to one of my huddles, you're not going to quit your job. You might. And I may encourage you to do that, but it's not a guarantee. It's funny because after you say that, like I can go back and think through the years, and that has actually happened often. Yeah. But you know what? The thing is about it. The reason I think that happens, Dimitri, is because I really am dedicated. It's like not just a podcast, you know, and it's not just like a course I teach with Spiritual DNA. It's like, I am so passionate about us not wasting our lives and knowing that if we're at a place where we're like just, you know, kind of getting in line with the cafeteria tray and saying, okay, life, give me, you know, thanks for the mashed potatoes, right? I hate mashed potatoes, but you gave, like, if God is, if who he says he is, and if we are who we are because of who he says we are, like we can believe that he's actually going to put dreams and visions and ideas, you know, in our life to lead us to a place of great joy and passion. And you've done that. We're going to unpack that. But what I want to do is give a little context because you are a graphic designer. That's what you're doing now. You're amazingly talented at that. Let's go back to the beginning. When was the kind of the first memories where you started to see like, wow, there's some unique to me gifts that God has given me?
Yeah, the earliest memory of art is in first grade. We were in art class, and I had drawn a picture, and it was actually of, funny, I think it was Grumpy from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Right. Our teacher had like a wooden cutout or something, and it was a free day, and everyone else is, you know, doing paper mache or painting, and I'm like, you know, over drawing Grumpy because I guess I connected with him being a grumpy introvert, and as a first grader I was like,
you were grumpy.
Yeah. But I remember, you know, drawing that, and we get out of class and we go back, and about, I don't know, 10-15 minutes later, the art teacher, Mrs. West, she comes down and knocks on the door, and my teacher goes and, you know, pops her head out, and she's got this paper, and they're kind of pointing, and teacher says, hey, Dimitri, I need you to come with me and go to the office. And I'm like, what is happening? I'm in trouble. Like, what did I draw? What's going on? Why is the art teacher coming to get me out of class? So we're sitting down in the principal's office, and it was probably, you know, within a half hour, my mom shows up, and I see her out in the lobby from the little window, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is bad. And so she comes in, and the art teacher comes in, and she says, hey, I want you to look at this. Your son drew this in class today, and it is not something that a first grader should be able to draw. This is very good. You need to focus on this. You need to lean into this. You need to, you know, help him pursue this because he's very talented. So that was really the start of like, okay, I guess I'm an artist kind of thing.
It's hard to identify first grade emotions, right? But I mean, obviously you remember that much detail of the story. So it had to stand out to you. Like, this is significant.
Yes, 100%. You know, I leaned into the art in elementary school, you know, and was drawing and whatever. But as I got into junior high school, sports became kind of the main focus. You know, that's how you get the girl. You don't get a girl drawing cool pictures in a little book. You get them by scoring touchdowns or something, right? So that's what I did.
Was it embraced? So, Dimitri, you go up. You're the oldest of four boys. A lot of testosterone in your house, right? Yeah. Your dad's a man's man, right? Yeah. So was it like, hey, we're Morrisons, we don't draw around here, we're not artists? Or, I mean, was it encouraged? Was it in the family? Kind of, where's that at?
Yeah, on my mom's side, there was artistic ability. My dad kind of pushed us in it a lot. He had us drawing in pictures and stuff, and it wasn't like okay, you need to stop that and focus on real stuff. I do remember a conversation when I was going to graduate from high school and what I wanted to do. There was a bit of a push to get into the healthcare field in some capacity because, you know, you'll get a job anywhere you live in the healthcare field. People are sick and need help anywhere you live in the country and the world, that's going to happen.
And that's a conversation your parents brought on.
Yeah,
Okay.
not necessarily art. And it's like, well, if I'm going to do this and do it myself, like I'm going to do what I'm passionate about. So that's, after high school and after the sports and stuff was over, it was like, okay, well, that doesn't pay the bills. That's not a career. Like, what can I lean into? And art had always been there, through high school. In our art class, our art teacher let us kind of have free reign during the period, and I taught myself Photoshop. And I remember getting called out of other classes to go help kids in the art room in Photoshop because I was, very proficient at it. I had other teachers having me help them with stuff on the computer. So it was like, okay, that seems like a pretty strong plan to lean into out of high school.
But one thing I think is interesting though, is some people, I think, can miss those signposts along the way. And there's a quote from Parker Palmer. I think I'm going to screw it up. He says something like, before I can tell my life what I want to do with it, I have to listen to my life tell me who I am. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of those ways, Dimitri, your life was telling you a lot about who God had created you to be. When you were with the Photoshop and with the Adobe stuff, and like, did all of that come pretty easily to you? I mean, was this kind of like, it was like, why is this hard? I learned this very naturally.
Yeah, it was, and it wasn't something that I felt was different or weird. It was just, this is just how it works. This is how my brain works. This is how I look at, the technology and the things on the screen. And I remember in college, a professor and I really butted heads on a procedure of how to do a certain thing. And he was very much in this mindset and I was in this mindset, but came to be that we both got to the same result equally. And I think he was kind of thrown for a loop because I'm supposed to be in this intro class of like learning and figuring this stuff out. Yeah. And it's like, well, actually, you can do it this way and get the same result. So,
well, what I love about that, Dimitri, it's something that so many people miss in discovering their calling. And it's the idea of unconscious competence, right? That you are unbelievably competent in that, but sometimes it happens so naturally that you're like, it's almost like the curse of knowledge and gifting, where it's just like, well, everybody's good at this, right? Mm-hmm. Like, this is not that big of a deal. Like, I didn't have to work that hard. I'm just good at it. And I think what's cool is that you didn't slough that off and be like, oh, I mean, everybody can draw, everybody can do graphic. Like, no, like, you're exceptional, and you've been exceptional literally since first grade. And even though it comes easy to you, that doesn't something we slough off and go like, well, it doesn't matter. No, it's something to actually lean into and go, whatever it is that I actually have excellence at and I learn it quickly, probably something that God's hardwired into my brain. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think, now learning that I'm an Enneagram 5, that was something I learned kind of on the tail end of Huddle, coming out of Huddle, but that just makes total sense as far as like everything that's happened in my life of, the research and the thirst for knowledge. And, I like all these kind of, off-center topics of, culture and stuff like that. And I think it's always been there, but to see it on paper and, when you read your description in Enneagram, you kind of look around the room like somebody been watching me and they just wrote me down, like it's that pinpoint accurate.
Yeah.
So yeah, that to me was like, okay, that there's something there, it's something I can lean into. And like you said, it's not everybody's proficient and does this. So how do I take advantage of this?
Well, it's those moments I always talk about in spiritual DNA. It's the awakening moments where you realize I make sense. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so empowering to come to a place of like, wait a second, I'm not random here. I'm not just a, connect, like random put together of things. Like, I really make sense. And you do, within your fivefold, kind of voice or calling in God's kingdom, you're a prophetic, or what we call prophetic connector, teacher, guardian combo of those two, which totally makes sense as an Enneagram 5. And we got to walk through that in Huddle. And one thing I think is interesting, I'd like you to speak to, Dimitri, is that I think Myers-Briggs, what are you, an INFJ? Yeah. So you're an introvert as well. So introverted Enneagram 5 prophet, right? Like, doesn't scream, I like to be in community with other people, right?
Not at all.
So talk to me about the process of stepping into that kind of community and what do you think drew you to it?
Yeah, so at the time in my life that we started Huddle, I was working at a job and I had gone through, at that point, four bosses in 4 years.
Wow.
No advancement, no promotion, no change of title, no nothing. It was just almost like a yearly reset with a new supervisor. Let me reprove myself. Let me show you what I can do. Let me take on more responsibility. Oh, you're leaving? Let me do it again. So it was just this like, man, like my life doesn't make sense right now. Like you're talking about like figuring out like you make sense, your life makes sense, how God made you make sense. Like that didn't make sense to me. I felt stuck. I felt like, okay, was this the right choice? Like, and now I'm, 4 years in at this place. Like, how do I transition? How do I switch it up? And at that point was when, you approached me about joining Huddle, and it was like, okay, my life doesn't make sense right now. This guy that I've looked up to as a teacher and a speaker and hopefully, one day a friend, a mentor comes to me randomly and asks to join the Huddle. Like that doesn't make sense. Really doesn't make sense. Why is that happening? God made that happen. Like we talked about, like, you were looking for people of peace. I wanted to be found kind of thing. Yeah. And it happened. So that made the decision of like stepping into this community of total strangers. The only person I knew was you kind of from, church and stuff. Mm-hmm. And it was great. Like, we talked about people are not meant to be alone. As much as I recharge my batteries and, get renewed by myself, like no man is an island. We're not meant to be by ourselves all the time. So really stepping into that group and choosing to be vulnerable and authentic for what I felt like was the first time in my life was a big, scary risk for me. Yeah. But man, it really paid off.
One of the things we do in Huddle, Dimitri, and this is we take a week where everybody gets a week to, a whole session to share their story, their life story. I'm guessing that had to be a little bit of I don't want to be too dramatic and say terrifying, but not necessarily something you would have jumped at, but you had to do it. Talk about what that did for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I contemplated being sick that week, to the point where it's like, oh, I missed my week. Yeah, we just move on. But yeah, it was, we were going through the lessons, we're learning all these shapes and different, concepts and things. And it's, these next few weeks, we're going to go around the table and share your story. And it's like, okay, well, I'm locked in a room with a bunch of strangers having to, be completely vulnerable. Like that's not really what I want to be doing at 7:30 in the morning when we meet. But leading up to that and seeing how everyone else before me had been vulnerable and honest and, let their guard down and not only honest with like their story, but with what I felt like was themselves. Growing up, I joke with my wife and tell her I've developed like a Jedi level skill of reading people just because of the way my life's gone and, things that I've had to do and really seeing and reading on and everybody around the table of like, man, they are being like super vulnerable and honest. Like, how can I not do that? How am I going to rob them of that experience and rob myself of that experience in this group of like being fully honest with myself and telling my story and, looking back at my life and realizing that, there's a lot of things that I've wanted to be true that weren't true. And a lot of struggles that a lot of people don't go through. And that's unique to me and people that I had on pedestals in my life. And, just kind of almost seeing all of that with a fresh lens. I feel like if it were any other point in my life, I would have overlooked that. But again, like just the way that everything set up, like that's when it was supposed to happen. That's when I was supposed to kind of realize these things and leaning into my wife a lot during that time of, super vulnerability. I had texted you one day about something during Huddle and you said, you had mentioned like, hey, you guys should journal, you should write stuff down. And I'd text you about something and you're like, well, have you wrote about it? Have you done anything? Well, no, I haven't. I'm going to get my feelings out. Like that's not what men do. Like, I'm not going to write something. And you said, you need to take a minute and write something. So went back to my cube and, started typing and it was like I blacked out. Like I had, 2 pages, I fully written something and I was like, okay, this was just an unconscious release almost. And I took it home and I let my wife read it and she looked at me and she said, that's the most vulnerable and real that I've ever seen. And like that's like a whole different person. And you're a pretty good writer, not speller out, but she was really blown away of like that practice. And I've done it a few times since then. And I wouldn't say I made it a habit, but that was something for me where it's like, man, like doing something that's uncomfortable, really makes a huge difference in what God's trying to say to us.
Yeah.
You know, if we're going through life and doing the easy things all the time, like there's no growth. Like you have to mess up, you have to get dirty, you have to do all these things to figure out, okay, I need to fix this, I need to change this.
Yeah.
This is where I could learn and grow from. So
you step into that space of vulnerability, and it is so key. I love that you brought that out, and all of us hate it. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, you want to wake up today and be vulnerable? No, right? I'd like to put on this persona that I like to create and make everybody think everything's great.
Yeah.
So you step into that, which is all about humility, which is all about accessing more and more of God's grace, right? Which is the pathway to maturity and everything that God has for us. But it brought you to a place where you began to realize that maybe God was nudging you to step out of the job that you had, had a lot of security and everything. And even though it was frustrating, I mean, you got kids, you got mortgage, you got a wife, everything, and you get a paycheck every, 2 weeks. And you began to feel like maybe it was time to step away and to bet on yourself. But that's a tough place to get to. And you had a conversation with a buddy, once again, leaning into relationship, into community that helped give you some perspective on that decision. Tell us that story.
Yeah, I was in a small group. We hosted our house, kind of like a Bible study. And I brought up to the group of, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is where I'm at, but I'm kind of nervous. I'm kind of scared. I don't really know if this is just me, masking it with, oh, God's telling me this, And one of the guys said, hey, we should go get lunch sometime this week. And we went out, and I'm kind of explaining to him, because he was asking those compassionately curious questions that we talk about in Huddle of like, so why do you feel this way? What's making you think these things? And, well, I just feel like I'm being unfaithful. I'm not a good Christian. I'm not a good follower of God because it's 8-9 months into Huddle now, and I've still not quit my job. Like I feel like this is what I was called to do, like very, very early on, sitting at the table with everyone in our group and seeing, everyone doing not your normal 9-to-5 jobs, but they're surviving, they're paying them, but they're happy. I can see their passion coming out in what they're doing. And it's like, man, I want that, like so early on in Huddle. So I'm telling him, like, I'm 8-9 months in, I haven't quit my job. And he said, don't feel like you're a bad Christian or you're being unfaithful. And he brought up a verse from Proverbs about he said, you're being like the ant that stores up for winter. So he's like, you do have a wife and kids, and you do have a mortgage, and you have to do all these things, and you have to do it the right way, and really pray about it and get, talk to other people and have them confirm like what you're thinking, you're hearing from God.
Yeah.
So that's really what that time was, my wife and I really spent a lot of time praying about it, making sure, okay, like, we're going to make this happen. I feel like she was a lot more excited about it than I was, because for me, like, it was a pride thing too, to know, okay, I'm going to quit my job. And our nanny that we had at the time watching our girls, like, we weren't going to be able to afford her anymore, because basically a whole paycheck of what I was making and part of another one was going just to childcare. So when we look at it from that aspect, it was like, I'm working for someone else to raise our kids. Like this really doesn't make sense. If I can bring in X amount, like we'll break even. And, but for me, it was, well, I'm going to be home with the kids as a man, and my wife's going to work, and I'm not the breadwinner. I'm not, out breaking my back and working long, hard days, so am I really working? Am I really, being this leader that society tells you to be in a house? Yeah. And our, my wife and I were just talking about this the other day, of our life is not your cookie cutter, way of living of what society tells you should be. The wife stays home and does this, the husband does that. We intermingle our responsibilities. So before quitting, it was a huge pride thing, because it's like, I know people back home or friends, or they're going to look and say like, oh, your wife goes and makes all this money and you just stay at home and babysit your kids. But I grew up in a house with a single dad who raised us and taught us, like, you don't need, like, men don't need women and women don't need men to survive. Like, we can all take care of ourselves. But he also filled this role of a mother in a lot of ways that for me, it didn't seem different or weird for me to, to be at home, working from home and do laundry and clean and stuff. So for me, that was normal. But that perception, like we talked about, of me wanting people to view me a certain way and see me as this type of person, that pride was like such a huge wall to climb over and get past of, man, quitting my job is going to mean people are going to think certain things, but is this best for my family? Is this what God wants me to do? Because if it is, he's going to help me overcome those things. Yeah. So yeah, that was tough to get through that.
Man, I'm so glad that you brought that up, Dimitri, because that's that's the nuts and bolts of the mind trash and stuff that I think we got to fight through to step into places of faith, to step into the places that aren't ordinary, that aren't familiar, that aren't like everybody else. And like, as much as, I love to inspire people to step in who God's called you to be, like, that may mean, and it probably is going to mean, that your life is not going to just look like everyone else's around you, but to get to that place where it's like, well, society would say this, or my friends would think this. And if I'm going to be, a slave to other people's thoughts and, emotions and opinions, like, then I'm going to stay stuck in a place that's not going to actually lead me to the joy and the freedom that I know that God has for me. You fought through that stuff. Take me up to the point where you made the decision, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to step out. I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to do my own deal. Take us to that moment.
Yeah. So when I finally did put in my letter of resignation, it was sliding the paper across the table. It was almost just like letting go of this old self that I had created and these old ways of thinking of like, that's not what a man looks like in God's eyes. Like, a man is someone who does what's best for their family and sacrifices. And I was taking a huge sacrifice in quitting a 9-to-5 paycheck every 2 week kind of job.
Yeah.
But man, it totally changed the dynamic of our family. It made things so much more happy, so much more loving, and just the environment of our home was changed so drastically. And the years, the last 3.5 years after that, like, things have happened that's, in my mind, like, shouldn't have happened in the time that they did after quitting. And to me, that's just a testament of like God's blessing on every step of this journey of like, hey, you've been faithful, you've done things the right way, you have sought counsel, you've made yourself vulnerable, you've prayed about it, you've consulted with your wife, like all these things, and then that last one, consulting with my wife, like, there's so many people that I know that don't understand that concept of like, you and your spouse are one, like, you make decisions together, you do all these things together. Our culture now is like, oh, I'll do it and I'll ask for forgiveness later. Like, this was we both decided this together. Yes, it was my job, but we both made that decision.
Yeah. So Dimitri, I love all of that. Was there a moment though, maybe 3 days in, 3 weeks in, 3 months in, 6 months in, a year in or something, where you were like sitting at home going to yourself like, I think I've made a really bad decision here?
Honestly, no.
Really?
Yeah. And I know that sounds like, oh, he's just being, optimistic or, whatever. But I really felt after I made that decision, like, the sky was the limit. Like, wow. I can do what I want, when I want, how I want. The clients that I've worked with, the people I've helped, the relationships that I've built, like, there's no way I can sit here now and say, like, I thought for a second that was a terrible decision. Like, I had so much support from family and from people in our church and just this community that I had built over that year of being in Huddle, of real community. I thought I was in community before, and that was all surface level, peripheral kind of relationships. But that year was like, okay, I'm going to get rid of all the people in my life who are going to hold me back, who are going to tear me down, and surround myself with people who encourage me, who, I can call and ask questions, and they'll give me honest and real advice, biblical advice. That really changed a lot. If I would have stayed in the group of people and the mindset that I was before, like, I know I would have been doubting it. But I had such a strong core of people around me, telling me what a good job I was doing and saying how proud they were of the decisions that I made and what we were doing. And just now, even today, like, the huge blessing that our family continues to receive. It's just been awesome.
So we don't need to talk, specific numbers, but over the past 3 years since you made the decision, I mean, are you barely scratching to get by? I mean, what's it like running your own deal?
It's up and to the right every year.
Really?
The first year I actually, ended the year net positive of what I would have done at a 9-to-5 job. In the first year, I made more than I would have made just staying stuck in a 9-to-5 job cubicle. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. Like, if I could just break even with what I had, like, that'd be great. But like, the Lord just blessed it with, relationships and just, I want to give people the best that I can give them.
Yeah.
And I put all of myself in, the INFJ that I am like a subcategory that's called the advocate, and like seeing people and like what they're doing with their business or what they're trying to accomplish. And because of how my brain works and analyzing everything and seeing, you know, everything from 30,000 foot and how they connect, I can step in and say, well, let's try X, Y, and Z. And these are the most important things. And let's do these first, and let's do these well. And just the process that I've been able to develop and the relationship with clients, like just becoming really good friends with a lot of people, good people who support not only me, but like their other entrepreneurial type friends. Yeah. Like that's huge.
And you wouldn't have the freedom or opportunity or space to do that in the job you're in.
No, because I'd come home and I would not want to touch a computer and look at stuff because I was so emotionally and mentally drained from just the culture that I was in, that it was like, that's become work. I'm not passionate about that anymore. I don't come home and do these side projects and try to learn more. It's just what I do for work, and I'll find a different hobby. I mean, I've always looked at art as like a part of my identity, but it's also been like something I just really enjoy doing. And when I started feeling like I was losing that passion for it, it's like, okay, I got to do something different. And I remember on a podcast that you did, you talked about like where passion, like the word comes from. Was it paseo or something? It means to suffer for. Yeah. I was out mowing one day, and it was right at the tail end of huddle, almost before I quit, and just almost making that decision. I was mowing, and you said like, what are you willing to suffer for? And it's like, this is what I'm willing to suffer for. Like my happiness, my mental health, you know, my relationship with my family, and just getting back to what I feel like, you know, was a big part of my life that I feel like I'd lost because I'd just been so drained from it. I wasn't doing art. I wasn't, you know, being creative. I didn't find joy in a lot of things. I'm willing to suffer to get those things back.
Oh gosh, Dimitri, it's so good, dude. It's so stinking good. And I just think about, man, and maybe we land the plane with this thought, is all I can think about is everything you just said is if we could get in a time machine and go back and talk to you 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and allow you right now to have the conversation with you back then. Because here's the thing I'd love for you to do is, you know, there could be hundreds of people listening right now that they may not be artists, they may not be graphic designers, but they have a passion, they have something they've pursued their life, and right now they're in a place where they just feel like it's Groundhog Day. They're stuck in a place, and fear and all of the head trash is telling you can't, and you're not good enough, and what will people think? And what would you say to yourself 6 years ago, or somebody right now that's listening and they're at that place and they just feel stuck?
So two things come to mind when you were asking that. One is the fear aspect. I mean, it was scary, you know, having two young girls at home, quitting a job, like that's scary. But I would say to the fear thing, do things that you're afraid of or that cause fear, and that will inevitably be the death of that fear. Like, don't sidestep it, don't avoid it, you know, because you're always going to be afraid of it at that point. But take it head on and do those things, and the anxiety, the fear, the being scared of that will slowly fall away because it becomes more natural. You know, I never would have quit my job if I was afraid to, you know, to lose income or something, you know, that's scary. And the other thing is investing in you'll never go broke if you invest in yourself. And I read that quote a while back, and it's like, that's what I've been doing the last 3.5 years, investing in myself and my family, and we've not gone broke. You know, I wouldn't say COVID and, you know, the last year has been a breeze, but we managed through it. And, you know, like a lot of people, like, you know, you just put your head down, you keep doing the work. The other thing would be like, people think, oh, when you're an entrepreneur early on and you're starting out or you're making your own business, like you just got to grind, you got to put all these hours, you got to do all this stuff. And like grinding is not the answer. You know, putting your head down, doing all this stuff, because all that does is make you do work that's really unnecessary for the sake of working. Like sometimes you got to pick your head up and look and see, like, am I still on the path that I had for myself? Or if I had my head down so much working and doing things just for work's sake that now I'm, you know, a mile off of my path and I got to work to get back to it. But then like figuring out how do I do things smarter and more efficiently. That's kind of the things that I've realized and come to over the past couple of years.
I love it, Dimitri. One thing that I thought about you were saying that is, it's like, you know, when you're saying you're at that place where, you're afraid to take this risk, and I got kids and this, is I think one of the lies that fear tells us, and I think it's straight from our enemy, is that you're alone, right? God's not going to take care of you. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying willy-nilly just, take risks, because you didn't. You had thoughts, you had plans, you brought in counsel, you brought in vulnerability, you walked and it wasn't like some wacky step that made no sense. Like, it was the next logical step of faith in your life. But to come back to the place and say, you know what? And this is where I remember coming to when I quit my job, right? This podcast is not about quitting your job, unless you need to quit your job. But where I had to say, do I actually trust that I'm in a covenant with God or not? Mm-hmm. The grounds of covenant is He's promised to protect and provide for us, right? So do I trust Him?
Mm-hmm. I mean, you're His kid, you're His child. He's going to do what's best for you. Like with me, I don't want to encourage people not to use their children as an excuse in doing stuff.
Ooh, come on, Dimitri.
Because to say, well, I can't do this because I have kids. Well, no, you can do it because you have kids. You can provide them a better life. You can provide them a better situation. You just have to do the work. You have to make sure what you're doing is going to get you to where you need to be. But like Jesus, when He came and died for us, and God sent His kid, He didn't say, oh, all my children, all these people I've created, they just screwed up. He didn't keep Jesus from dying for us because of what we did. We weren't an excuse. That's why He died for us, if that makes sense.
Well, and the story you're giving for your daughters right now, I mean, have you, I know they're still little, but is there any, have you started having conversations as a family of about the risk you've taken and about this adventure that you're living with God?
Not so much with the work aspect. In the summer they're both home because they're out of school, so they get to see me working, and I try to carve out hours in the day to play and read books with them, and we have lunch together every day around the table and stuff. But the things that I do want them to see is a father and a husband that does things around the house to help his wife and to respect his wife. And that I want them to, not saying that I'm perfect, but I want that for them. I want them to have a husband and someone in their life who helps them and doesn't just expect things out of them.
Sure.
Because growing up, I was always told that Morsons have men and, it's all boys. I mean, you look back at my family history for 4 generations, they're the first 2 girls that we've had. Yeah. So that was a huge shock to our family of wow, we've got little Morson girls now.
What do we do with girls?
And my wife and I are just trying to raise them not as, they're not little kids, they're little women. We're raising them to have self-respect for themselves and respect others, but also show them, because I came from a broken family. I didn't have a mother and a father in the household together, working through problems, seeing how that worked. And that, I know how that affected me. I want them to see that, and I want them to see it the right way. Yeah. So more so for me than the work aspect is just what am I doing at home? I work from home. I'm home now. That's the main thing. Your job, you can be replaced in anything that you do, but the only area you can't be replaced is as a parent. Yeah. And that's where I have to put most of my responsibility and priority.
I love it, Dimitri. I love the way you've walked it out. And what I'm excited about it, I mean, I know that your girls are little, but what I'm excited about is when you start helping them make some of those decisions in those, late high school, early college years about their journey. What I love is that you could have said, I can't take the risk to step in who God's called me to be. I can't take this risk to step out in faith because I got daughters. And they would have probably grown up with a dad that was absent, a dad that was angry, a dad that was not passionate, right? And they would have learned, I remember a mentor of mine saying that more is caught than is taught in parenting.
Yeah, 100%.
And what I love is you're going to teach them the lessons of what you've lived, but what they're catching is this is what it looks like to trust God and to chase passion. And that may be, that amongst a lot of things that you and Gwen are teaching your daughters, may be the greatest gift that you give them is live a life of passion, live a life of risk, because you're worth it, and God's that good.
Yeah.
So good. The man, the myth, the legend, Dimitri Morson. Dimitri, if they want to get involved, maybe they want you to design something for them, for their company, for their business, for whatever, how do they get connected, Dimitri?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Dimitri Morson Designs. Got a website that's under construction currently. I've just not had time to put on myself. I've been so busy, but that's a good thing. You can shoot me an email or a message on there. So, yeah.
Awesome. Good stuff. Appreciate it, Dimitri.
Yeah, thank you.
And we're back. Demetri Morrison. Love that guy. Such a good story. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk you through these building blocks to becoming who you're born to be on the back half of the interview here. And as we go through and kind of highlight what you just heard from Demetri, I want to consolidate this into your brain to give you some momentum to move forward in your own journey. And what I want you to do is, if you want to be able to kind of grade yourself, to get an idea, a quick snapshot of where you are in these 4 building blocks, here's where you're going to go. You're going to go to DarrenEarlywine.com/info. Nope, you're going to go to DarrenEarlywine.com/contact. And when you go there, and you're just going to put your email, your name in there, and then the tell us more window, just put in their PDF or building blocks, and we'll send you the PDF so you can go through and kind of grade yourself and get a snapshot on where are you in these building blocks? Where do you need to grow? Where are you killing it right now? Where are things, where they need to be? And the first building block is this, it's gratitude. And Demetri talked about right off the bat, it's following the signposts of his life, listening to what his life is telling him as he's being guided and directed in this. One of his first signposts, I love it, right? He's drawing Grumpy, right, in first grade, and he realizes, or his teachers realize, this is not normative. This kid has a great talent. And you have signpost type moments like that in your life. And the key to being able to use these signpost type early moments of gifting in our life is to embrace gratitude. Find the things that are the unconscious competences of your life that bring you joy. There are things you learn easily, the things that you gain, ability and strength and competence in quickly, and they actually bring joy and impact to others. When you see those things happening in your life, those are signposts to move forward. And what I want you to do is embrace them with gratitude, because here's the 3 things that can steal gratitude away from these building blocks. It's one of these 3 things. It's either gift envy, gift arrogance, or gift ignorance. First foremost, gift ignorance, meaning that you've just not paid attention to the signposts in your life. If you took some time and you journaled and you asked some people around you, you're going to have a moment like Demetri had, first, second, third grade, where you were able to accomplish and make an impact with some skill, some natural talent that most other people didn't have, and it felt very easy to you. In that, you need to go back and anchor yourself to God was showing me something about who he created me to be in those moments. They're not inconsequential. They're not just something you slough off and be like, I was just a kid. It was just first grade drawing Grumpy. No, it was something unique to you. And it was a signpost that God was trying to get you connected, right, to the gifts he's given you, and for you to begin to show gratitude for them and move forward in them. And where the gratitude can also get stolen there is where you get into what we might call gift envy, where maybe you have that moment. You go, you know what it is? When I was a kid like that, it was actually math, or, it was like storytelling, or for me, it was being able to kind of like put together outfits creatively, but that's so stupid. And it's not as cool as Demetri. I mean, it's not like I could draw like that. That's really a talent. My stuff is just stupid. And if I could be as cool as him and have a gift like that, that'd be great. See, what you're doing there is you're embracing a gift envy, and you're not showing gratitude for the unique way God's created you. He didn't create you to be Demetri. He created you to be you. And so you have to embrace, instead of a gift envy, a gift gratitude. And then you have to watch that, right? Because sometimes if you embrace too much of that, what you can get into is gift arrogance. And we don't want to go there either, which is pretty self-explanatory, right? Like, my gifts are so much more dominant and amazing than whatever your little crappy gift is. I'm amazing. Now you've moved from gratitude into arrogance. That really begins to short circuit the whole process of being a servant to serve and to love and to bring joy into other people's lives. So one of the things that you'll notice as Demetri talked through this episode is he mentions a lot of the assessments and a lot of the process that he understood through spiritual DNA and through going through a huddle, discipleship huddle with me. And what happened with Demetri and can happen for you is that knowing himself actually helped him recognize his path. He was grateful for it. He embraced it, but he had to begin to actually understand all great knowledge on earth. John Calvin said this, right? Begins with an ever-increasing knowledge of God and an ever-increasing knowledge of ourselves. And if you're at a place where it's kind of a blank slate for you, you're like, I didn't really pay attention when I was a kid. I don't have any idea what's unique to me. I'd love to actually be able to embrace the idea of not being envious and not being arrogant, but to be grateful for my gifts, but I don't know what is unique about me. You need to go take Spiritual DNA. Just go to spiritualdna.me, jump into the course, and you can have some of the knowledge that Demetri has that has helped him actually guide and direct him to choose gratitude and move into who he's created to be. That's the first building block. Second one is this. The second one is humility, okay? And what you saw for Demetri in the story is that he began to embrace an interdependent life. For him, he's an introvert, right? He'd rather be by himself. That's not where he's going to go naturally. And he had to choose to humble himself and take on a vulnerable position. So it's really interesting how humility and vulnerability, they're almost like next door neighbors in life. It's for you to step into a place of humility. It's probably going to lead you into a place of vulnerability. And humility isn't necessarily thinking less of yourself and talking yourself down and being like, I'm not any good. No, you're grateful for the gifts and abilities you have. But then instead of thinking less of yourself, right, that you're bad, you just think of yourself less. Meaning that you realize that to be who God's created you to be, you need to be in interdependent, connected relationships with others. And that's going to cause you to choose vulnerability. And here's the deal about that, is God himself is in a relationship. And I think sometimes we forget that, right? The great mystery of the Trinity, God, Father, and God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. They are in a relationship, an interdependent, non-hierarchical, right? Servant-hearted based relationship with one another. And if we're created in his image, that means that is the design he would have for us. And that means a vulnerability. Difficult to embrace, especially as we talked about early before we jumped in the interview, right? That fear is your enemy. Especially if you're an introverted person, fear is going to tell you don't need other people. You can't trust these other people. You don't need to become interdependent on anybody. And I didn't say to become dependent, right? I'm not talking about a codependency. I'm not talking about a straight up just dependency. I'm talking about an interdependence where I'm grateful and confident in who God's created me to be, but I know that I can't be everything I've been called to be unless I'm in a vulnerable, humble relationship, serving others and loving them well. Difficult to get to, but that's why the next building block comes in, and it's so important, which is courage. If you're going to live a grateful life, if you're going to live a humble life, it's going to take courage. And that means that you got to move towards that which scares you. Demetri said this multiple times during the episode. I thought it was right on. I totally agree with it, but it's so difficult to actually step into. I think that's why in the Bible, right, 365 days, so 365 times in the Bible that would correspond to the 365 days of the year, we're told to do not be afraid, do not be terrified, right, to be strong and courageous. We're told again and again and again to step into a life of courage. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again here on the podcast, is sometimes we buy into this fallacy that we're going to wait for fear to subside before we step into this process of becoming who we're born to be. It's not going away. Your fear is not going to go away. You just have to begin to choose faith in the face of fear and to become a courageous person, to choose courage. And the good thing part about this is we're not left on our own here, right? God has promised us time and time again to be with us. He tells us in 2 Timothy 1:7, right? For God will never give you the spirit of fear. And this is about fear of men, not necessarily fear of God. We know we have that respect, and the fear of God is the beginning of knowledge. But he will never give us a spirit of fear, but the Holy Spirit who gives you mighty power, love, and self-control. So if you're in a place in your life right now where you're starting to sense God leading you into some of these environments that Demetri talked about, but you find yourself overcome with the spirit of fear, I want you to know this, that's not from God. He is not going to give you a spirit of fear that keeps you paralyzed from moving forward. What he's going to do is give you the opportunity, empowered by his Holy Spirit, to choose courage and to move forward, to do things that you're afraid of, right? And you look at the places in the crossroads that Demetri has, like when he's at the place where he's like, I think I'm going to actually step out on my own, quit my job, and go after that which I'm passionate about. And he talks about that moment where he's out mowing his lawn and he's trying to say, this is, I want to live a passionate life. And here's the deal. A lot of us say stuff like that. And we may perceive the kind of life, and maybe there's a moment as you're listening to Demetri's story, you're getting inspired, and you're like, yes, I want to be able to say that. I want to live a passionate life. But you find yourself still stuck year after year in the place that you're in right now because you've been waiting for the fear to go away. And I want you to hear what Demetri said, and it reminded me of something that we went through with Scott Lang a couple episodes ago, to actually begin to run towards your joy. Run towards your joy and run towards your passion, that which you're willing to suffer for. Because you may say, I want the benefits of living a life of passion, but are you willing to pay the price for it? And the way you begin to do that is you begin to choose courage, move towards things that scare you. Oftentimes, you have to humble yourself and choose vulnerability, coming from a place of gratitude that God has created you on purpose and for a purpose. He's going to be with you. He's going to be for you through this whole process. And so you can go and take that small step of faith to step out and to choose courage and make that next step. The last thing I would say is this. The last building block is to choose faithfulness. Gratitude, humility, courage, and faithfulness. And this faithfulness that I want to encourage you first and foremost is to stay yoked with Jesus, to stay connected with him through the whole entire process. And that you saw with Dimitri, step by step by step, he was faithful to his connection with God. He was faithful to his connection to his wife. He was faithful to his connection to his kids. And he was faithful to his connection to his gifts and abilities in the unique ways that God had created him. He talks about there, right, that the times that he was in the Word, that he was seeking, that he was praying, that he was staying yoked together with Christ. One of my favorite scriptures, right? Matthew 11, where Jesus invites us. It's a straight invitation right to him. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Getting yoked with him and trusting that covenant connection. You know, as Dimitri talked about, that point of coming to the point where it's like, we were having that discussion of like, you know, coming to the point where you have to trust that I really am in a covenant with God. We are becoming one together. I'm yoked with Jesus. I'm walking with him. He's promised to protect and provide for me so I can step into courage. I can choose the humility. I can choose the courage. I can choose the gratitude, and I can stay faithful to that which he's called me to do. And I can remember a moment in my own journey. I love when Dimitri talked about that time of praying and consulting with his wife and making these kind of big life decisions together as a team. Is the moment that I stepped away from full-time ministry in the church. My wife and I had this beautiful conversation where we had a conversation we had never had in 10 years of marriage at that point, where I had never told her that I had a moment when I was praying in college where I sensed that God, I responded to this call to ministry with all the momentum in this moment. I felt like God was calling me into a missionary life. This missionary came, he's an amazing speaker, and he got us all fired up to join the mission of God. And I was like, yes, I'll be a missionary. But I was kind of like, God, you know how I feel about poisonous snakes and Africa huts in Papua New Guinea, and I just don't know that I could do the international thing. This is what I was afraid you were going to screw up my life and make me do something I would hate. And I can remember I was praying at the altar that day and sensed the Holy Spirit say, I'm calling you to be a missionary to America. And that is actually what I have become. And when I'm in this moment, about to step out of this moment, I'm choosing this humility. I'm choosing the courage. I'm choosing the gratitude for who God's created me to be. I understand who he's created me to be. I'm stepping fully into my spiritual DNA. There's this moment where I had to come back to that life-changing moment. My wife and I were talking about it. How do we honor this? And she says, you know what? I had the exact same moment when I was in college. And it blew my mind because I was like, what? Hello? We haven't talked about this ever. But in this moment of us praying and consulting together and saying we're going to be faithful to God, we're going to be faithful to each other, we're going to be faithful to our kids, we're going to be faithful to our calling, there was an amazing amount of peace and courage and gratitude that led us to be able to step on that building block and take a huge step to become who I was born to be and who we were created to be as a family. So I want to encourage you to do that. Don't make these kind of decisions out on an island. If you're at a point, a crossroads point, you're trying to figure out, how do I build on this to move forward? Those are the 4 building blocks: gratitude, humility, courage, and faithfulness. And so where are you at? Where are you at in those building blocks? Is there one that is great, in greater capacity than the other, or is there one that doesn't really exist in your life, or have you never really thought about them? Here's what I want to do for you. I want to send you a quick PDF. It's going to be just a 1-page thing where you can just take some time to reflect, okay? To stop, to assess, to journal, to say, God, where am I at and where is my next step of growth? If I need to build these building blocks of a foundation to become who I was born to be, where am I at and where's my next step of growth? So I want you to go to DarrenEarlywine.com/contact, okay? In there, just in the memo line that says, tell us more, tell us, I want the PDF, or say building blocks of character, something that will let us know you want that. And we're going to send it immediately to you. And you can sit down and have some times to actually reflect upon this and say, God, what is the next step for me? What's the next building block that I need to actually begin to construct to become what I was born to be? And that's it. Thank you for hanging out again in this episode. Thanks to Dimitri Morrison for taking us on that journey. Thank you for his gratitude. Thank you for his courage. Thank you for his humility. Thank you for his faithfulness. And it's been a joy to walk that journey with him. And it's such a joy to walk with you guys on this podcast. Once again, love to hear from you. Reach out to me. You can text me 317-550-5070. Reach out through all the social medias, or you can email me directly, Darren@blackbirdmission.com. If you'd like that building blocks of calling and becoming you're born to be, I'll send it to you today. Just go to DarrenEarlywine.com/contacts, and in the memo, tell us more. Just write PDF or building blocks, and we'll get that sent over to you. Listen, have an amazing day. Have an amazing week. Can't wait to talk to you next week for episode 51 of the Darren Earlywine Wine Podcast. Have an amazing week.